Daniel's heart swelled. That's a great idea, sweetheart. 8-year-old Maya notices an elderly man, Mr. Whitaker, sitting alone on his birthday at a restaurant. Feeling heartbroken, she asks to join him, turning what could have been a lonely evening into something unforgettable. But what Maya doesn't know is that this small act of kindness will set off a chain of events that will change her life forever. The next morning, a knock at the door brings shocking news, one that no one could have predicted. How does Maya's kindness lead to an unexpected twist? Stick around to find out. And before we dive in, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe. The warm scent of fresh garlic knots and simmering tomato sauce filled the air as Maya Carter and her father, Daniel, stepped into Bella's Bistro, their favorite neighborhood restaurant. It was Friday night, a tradition they had kept for as long as Maya could remember. The cozy Italian eatery had become their weekly ritual, a time to unwind from the week and share stories over delicious food. Do you think Bella made the special garlic knots tonight? Maya asked, her big brown eyes shining with excitement as they walked toward their usual booth by the corner. Daniel chuckled, giving his daughter's hand a gentle squeeze. I hope so, sweet pea. You know I can't resist those. As they settled into their booth, Bella, the restaurant's warm-hearted owner, emerged from the kitchen, wiping her flour-dusted hands on her apron. Her round face lit up at the sight of them. My favorite Friday night duo, she greeted with a grin. Maya, you're growing too fast. One of these days, you'll be taller than your dad. Maya giggled. Maybe. But first, tell me, did you make the garlic knots? Bella winked. Of course, Cara Mia. They're fresh out of the oven. I'll bring some right away. Maya smiled as she looked around the bustling restaurant. The sound of laughter and the clinking of cutlery created a familiar and comforting symphony. Families gathered around steaming plates of pasta, couples shared quiet conversations over candlelit tables, and friends raised glasses in celebration. But amid the lively chatter, something caught Maya's attention. By the far window, an elderly man sat alone at a small table. He wore a neatly pressed but slightly worn tweed jacket, and his white hair was combed back. Though he appeared well put together, there was a sadness in his eyes, a loneliness that seemed to weigh heavily on his slumped shoulders. Maya nudged her father and whispered, Daddy, look. That man looks really sad. Daniel followed her gaze and sighed softly. Some people feel lonely, sweetheart, especially when they get older. As they watched, Bella approached the man's table, carrying a small cupcake with a single candle. She placed it in front of him with a warm smile. Happy birthday, Mr. Whitaker, she said softly. Maya's ears perked up at the word birthday. She watched as Mr. Whitaker's lips curved into a small, grateful smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. He blew out the candle quietly, his shoulders sagging slightly as if the weight of his solitude had become even heavier. Maya turned to her father, her heart aching for the elderly man. Daddy, he's all alone. That's so sad. Shouldn't someone be celebrating with him? Daniel hesitated, glancing between his daughter and Mr. Whitaker. Maybe, he admitted. But we don't know his story, sweetheart. Maya's brow furrowed as she thought for a moment. Then, her face lit up with an idea. Can we go sit with him? Daniel blinked, surprised. Maya, we don't want to intrude on his dinner. But Daddy, she pressed, her voice filled with sincerity, no one should be alone on their birthday. Daniel sighed, knowing he could never say no when his daughter was this determined, especially when her heart was in the right place. He smiled gently. All right, but let's ask Bella first. Maya beamed with excitement, sliding out of the booth as her father signaled for Bella. When Bella approached, Daniel explained, Maya noticed that Mr. Whitaker is celebrating his birthday alone. She was wondering if we could join him. Bella's eyes misted over with emotion, and she glanced at Mr. Whitaker. Oh, bless your hearts, she murmured. Mr. Whitaker has been coming here for years, always alone. I think he would appreciate the company. Encouraged by Bella's words, Maya and Daniel made their way to Mr. Whitaker's table. Daniel cleared his throat gently. Excuse me, sir, he said softly. The old man looked up, surprise evident in his faded blue eyes. I hope we're not interrupting, but my daughter, Maya, heard it was your birthday, Daniel continued. She wanted to wish you well. Mr. Whitaker blinked, clearly taken aback. Then his gaze shifted to Maya, who offered him a bright, hopeful smile. "Happy birthday, Mr. Whitaker," she said shyly. "I hope you don't mind, but I thought maybe D like some company." The old man was silent for a long moment, as if he was processing the unexpected gesture. Then, to Maya's delight, his lips curved into a genuine smile. I would like that very much," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. Daniel pulled out a chair for Maya, and she climbed onto it, her feet dangling above the floor. "How old are you today, Mr. Whitaker?" she asked, her natural curiosity shining through. The elderly man chuckled, the sound a bit rusty, as if he hadn't laughed in a while. 75. Today. Can you believe it? Maya's eyes grew wide. "Wow. That's a lot of birthdays." Mr. Whitaker smiled at her enthusiasm. "It sure is." The conversation flowed effortlessly after that. Maya's innocent question seemed to unlock something in Mr. Whitaker, and soon he was sharing stories from his childhood, his adventures as a young man, and his long career as a teacher. As the evening unfolded, Mr. Whitaker's demeanor changed. The weariness lifted from his shoulders, and for the first time that night, he looked like a man surrounded by friends rather than a lonely soul in a crowded room. At one point, Bella returned, carrying a small chocolate cake with a single candle. "I overheard you talking about your childhood, Mr. Whitaker," she said with a wink. "We always keep a chocolate cake on hand, just in case." Mr. Whitaker's eyes misted over as Bella placed the cake in front of him. "Oh my, this is... I don't know what to say." Maya clapped her hands. "Make a wish, Mr. Whitaker." The old man closed his eyes, a soft smile on his lips. When he opened them, he blew out the candle with a surprising gust of breath. The small group erupted in applause, and several nearby diners joined in, sending a ripple of joy throughout the restaurant. As Bella cut slices of cake for everyone, Mr. Whitaker turned to Maya, his blue eyes shimmering with gratitude. "You know, young lady," he said warmly, "this is the best birthday I've had in a very long time." Maya beamed, chocolate frosting smeared on her chin. "You're welcome, Mr. Whitaker. Nobody should be alone on their birthday." Daniel watched the scene unfold, his heart swelling with pride. What had started as a simple dinner at their favorite restaurant had turned into something far more meaningful. And yet, none of them knew that this one evening of kindness would soon change their lives forever. The night air was crisp as Daniel and Maya stepped out of Bella's bistro, the warm glow of the restaurant's lights fading behind them. Mr. Whitaker had walked them to the door, thanking them repeatedly for making his birthday so special. His gratitude had been genuine, almost overwhelming, as if he hadn't expected anyone to care. As they strolled home, Maya's small hand tucked into her father's, she was still buzzing with excitement from the evening. "Daddy," she said, looking up at him, "do you think Mr. Whitaker was really happy tonight?" Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand. "I think you made his night, sweetheart. You saw how much he lit up when you started talking to him." Maya beamed at the thought. "I am glad. He seemed so sad at first. I just wanted him to feel special." Daniel stopped at the crosswalk and glanced down at his daughter. She had such a pure heart, so full of empathy for others. He felt an immense sense of pride knowing she had chosen to reach out to a stranger simply because it felt like the right thing to do. "That was a very kind thing you did, Maya," he told her. "Not everyone would have noticed someone like Mr. Whitaker sitting alone, but you did. And instead of just feeling sorry for him, you did something about it." Maya's smile widened, but then her expression grew thoughtful. "Do you think he has a family?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "I don't know. Maybe he did once, but he might not anymore. Some people lose touch with family, or maybe they've passed on." Maya frowned at the thought. "That's really sad. I hope he knows he's not alone." "I think you reminded him of that tonight," Daniel reassured her as they crossed the street. When they arrived home, Maya immediately slipped off her shoes and ran to the kitchen to grab a piece of paper and a marker. Daniel chuckled as he watched her from the doorway. "What are you doing, sweet pea?" "I'm making Mr. Whitaker a card," she said, already drawing a big heart in the center of the page. "So next time we see him at Bella's, I can give it to him." Daniel's heart swelled. "That's a great idea, sweetheart." Maya grinned and went back to coloring. Later that night, as Daniel tucked her into bed, she looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy, do you think people ever get too old to be happy?" Daniel was taken aback by the question. He sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "I think sometimes people get lonely, and that makes them feel like happiness is far away. But that doesn't mean it's gone forever. It just takes the right moment, or the right person, to remind them that they're still loved." Maya yawned, snuggling deeper under the covers. "I hope Mr. Whitaker knows he's loved." "I think he does now," Daniel said softly, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Good night, sweetheart." "Good night, Daddy." The next morning, everything changed. Daniel was in the kitchen making pancakes when there was a sudden knock at the door. The sound was firm, serious. He glanced toward Maya's room, making sure she was still asleep, before heading to the door and unlocking it. Standing outside were two uniformed police officers, a man and a woman, their expressions unreadable. "Good morning, sir," the male officer said. "Are you Daniel Carter?" Daniel's stomach tightened with unease. "Yes, that's me. Is something wrong?" The female officer, whose badge read Officer Ruiz, stepped forward. "We're here regarding an elderly gentleman, Mr. Henry Whitaker. We were told you and your daughter were with him last night at Bella's Bistro." Daniel felt a cold sensation creep up his spine. "Yes, we had dinner with him. Is he okay?" The officers exchanged a sober look before Officer Ruiz spoke again. "I'm afraid Mr. Whitaker was found unresponsive in his home late last night. Paramedics arrived, but they were unable to revive him." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He passed away?" Officer Ruiz nodded. "We believe he died peacefully in his sleep." Daniel's mind raced back to the previous night, the laughter, the stories, the way Mr. Whitaker had smiled so genuinely for what seemed like the first time in a long while. How could someone who had been so alive just hours before be gone now? The male officer, Officer Green, cleared his throat. "We understand that you and your daughter may have been some of the last people to speak with Mr. Whitaker. We just need to ask a few questions." Daniel's heart pounded as he thought of Maya. How would he tell her? "Of course," he said, stepping aside to let them in. He led the officers into the living room, his mind still reeling. "When was the last time you saw Mr. Whitaker?" Officer Green asked, flipping open a small notepad. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, trying to focus. "Last night at Bella's. My daughter noticed he was alone, so we asked if we could sit with him. We talked for a while, then we all left at closing time. He seemed happy." The officers nodded. Officer Ruiz's voice was gentle. "Did Mr. Whitaker mention anything about his health? Did he seem ill?" Daniel shook his head. "Not at all. He seemed fine, just a little lonely." The officers exchanged another glance before Officer Green spoke again. "Mr. Whitaker's housekeeper was the one who found him this morning. She said she had never seen him in such good spirits yesterday. Apparently, he wouldn't stop talking about how wonderful his birthday was." A lump formed in Daniel's throat. Maya had given him that. His last birthday had been full of joy, and now he was gone. Officer Ruiz hesitated before adding, "We didn't find any immediate family listed, but we did find a note in his home." Daniel's brow furrowed. "A note?" She nodded, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It was left on his nightstand. "It's addressed to Maya." Daniel stared at the paper in shock. "To Maya? If you're reading this, it means I've moved on from this world. But please don't be sad. In my final hours, I was reminded of something I thought I had lost forever: joy. You gave me that. You reminded me of my dear Eleanor, my granddaughter, whom I lost long ago. For the first time in years, I felt young again, as if my heart had room for happiness. Thank you for showing me kindness. Thank you for reminding me that love still exists in this world. I have made arrangements to ensure that your kindness continues to grow. You have a beautiful heart, Maya. Never stop sharing it with the world. With gratitude, Henry Whitaker." Daniel felt his throat tighten as he lowered the letter. His eyes stung with unshed tears. This was more than just an act of kindness. It was a moment that had changed someone's final hours, a moment that would now change Maya's life forever. And Daniel had no idea how he was going to tell her. Daniel sat in the quiet of the living room, the letter from Mr. Whitaker still trembling in his hands. His mind swirled with emotions, grief, disbelief, and the growing weight of responsibility. How was he supposed to explain this to Maya? His daughter, who had just last night given Mr. Whitaker the happiest birthday he'd had in years, had no idea that her new friend was now gone. She would be devastated. Officer Ruiz shifted in her seat, watching him carefully. "Would you like us to stay when you tell her?" she asked gently. Daniel shook his head, exhaling a shaky breath. "No. I think this is something I need to do on my own." Officer Green nodded in understanding. "We completely understand, Mr. Carter. If you or Maya need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out." As the officers stood to leave, Daniel walked them to the door, still gripping the letter in his hand. The moment he shut the door behind them, he leaned against it, taking a deep, steadying breath. He wasn't ready for this conversation. But then again, how could anyone be? With a heavy heart, he made his way down the hall to Maya's room. The door was slightly ajar, and he peeked inside. Maya was curled up on her bed, her sketchbook in her lap. She had drawn a picture of Mr. Whitaker, sitting at Bella's, smiling with a birthday cupcake in front of him. She was humming softly, lost in her work. Daniel's heart clenched painfully. She had no idea. Clearing his throat, he knocked lightly on the door. "Hey, sweet pea." Maya looked up, her face brightening when she saw him. "Daddy. Look, I drew Mr. Whitaker. Do you think he'll like it?" Daniel forced a smile as he walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. "It's beautiful, Maya. You're very talented." Maya beamed but then frowned slightly, noticing the sadness in her father's expression. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Daniel inhaled slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about Mr. Whitaker." Maya's face lit up again. "Oh, are we going to see him today? I still have to give him his card." Daniel's chest tightened. He wished more than anything that he could protect her from this moment. But there was no way around it. He took her small hands in his. "Maya, Mr. Whitaker passed away last night." Maya blinked, her smile fading instantly. "What?" Daniel's voice was gentle, steady, even though his own heart was breaking. "The police came this morning. They said he passed away peacefully in his sleep." Maya's hands went limp in his. But we just saw him." Her voice trembled, her big brown eyes filling with confusion. "He was happy. He wasn't sick. He had cake." Tears welled up in her eyes, and her small body began to tremble. "Did we do something wrong?" Daniel's heart shattered at her words. He pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly. "Oh, sweetheart, no. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you did something beautiful." Maya's small hands clutched his shirt, and he could feel her body shaking. "Then why did he have to die?" she whispered. Daniel stroked her hair gently, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people are just ready to go. And I think Mr. Whitaker was holding on to a lot of sadness for a long time. But last night, because of you, he got to leave this world happy. That's a gift, Maya." Maya sniffled against his chest, her tears soaking his shirt. "I didn't want him to go," she whispered. "I wanted to see him again." Daniel closed his eyes, holding her closer. "I know, sweetheart. I know." They sat there in silence for a while, Maya's quiet sobs the only sound in the room. Daniel let her cry, knowing that nothing he said could take away the hurt. After a few moments, he remembered the letter. "Maya," he said softly, pulling back just enough to look at her. "Mr. Whitaker left you something." Maya rubbed her eyes, sniffling. "What do you mean?" Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded paper. "Before he passed, he wrote you a letter. The police found it on his nightstand." Maya's eyes widened, her fingers trembling as she reached for the paper. He wrote to me." Daniel nodded. "Do you want me to read it to you?" Maya hesitated, then nodded quickly. Daniel unfolded the note, his voice soft as he read aloud. "Dear Maya, if you're reading this, it means I've moved on from this world. But please don't be sad. In my final hours, I was reminded of something I thought I had lost forever, joy. You gave me that. You reminded me of my dear Eleanor, my granddaughter, whom I lost long ago. For the first time in years, I felt young again, as if my heart had room for happiness. Thank you for showing me kindness." Thank you for reminding me that love still exists in this world. I have made arrangements to ensure that your kindness continues to grow. You have a beautiful heart, Maya. Never stop sharing it with the world. With gratitude. Henry Whitaker. By the time Daniel finished reading, Maya was clutching the letter to her chest, tears rolling down her cheeks. He was happy, she whispered. Daniel nodded, brushing a tear from her cheek. Yes, sweetheart. He was very happy. Maya sniffled again, but a small, sad smile tugged at her lips. I'm glad. Daniel kissed the top of her head. Me too, sweet pea. For a long while, Maya simply held the letter close, her little fingers gripping the paper as if afraid it would disappear. Then, after a deep breath, she whispered, Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. Do you think, she hesitated, gathering her thoughts. Do you think we could do something to remember him? So that he's never really gone. Daniel felt his chest tighten, overwhelmed by the depth of his daughter's heart. I think that's a beautiful idea, he said softly. What did you have in mind? Maya thought for a moment, then sat up straighter, determination replacing the sorrow in her eyes. I want to plant a tree, she said. For Mr. Whitaker. Somewhere people can sit and remember him. And when the tree grows big and strong, it'll remind people to be kind, just like he was. Daniel's throat grew tight with emotion, but he managed to smile. I love that idea. Maya wiped the last of her tears away, nodding to herself. Then that's what we'll do. As Daniel held his daughter close, he realized something profound. Mr. Whitaker had left behind more than just a letter. He had left a legacy. And Maya was about to carry it forward. The weekend passed in a blur of quiet grief and reflection. Maya carried Mr. Whitaker's letter with her everywhere, reading it over and over as if to hold on to the last piece of him. Daniel had given her space to process everything in her own way. He knew this was her first real experience with loss, and he didn't want to rush her through her emotions. But by Sunday evening, something in Maya had shifted. She was no longer just mourning Mr. Whitaker, she was determined to honor him. They were sitting at the kitchen table when she lifted her head, her voice clear and steady. Daddy, when can we plant the tree? Daniel paused, setting down his coffee. Whenever you want, sweetheart. Maya's face brightened. Can we do it at the park? Near the benches where people sit. Daniel smiled. I think that's a perfect spot. The next morning, after dropping Maya off at school, Daniel made a few calls. The local parks department was touched by the story of Maya's kindness and agreed to help with the tree planting. By the time he picked Maya up that afternoon, he had news. So, he said as she climbed into the car, I talked to the city today. Maya's eyes lit up. And they loved your idea. They're going to help us plant the tree this weekend. Maya gasped in excitement. Really? Really? Her small hands clapped together. This is going to be amazing. Daniel felt a warmth spread through him. Even in her sadness, Maya's heart still sought to bring light. But neither of them knew that this one act would become something much bigger than just planting a tree. By Saturday, the park was buzzing with people. Daniel had expected a small gathering, maybe just him, Maya, and a few neighbors. But word had spread. By the time they arrived, there was a crowd, neighbors, teachers from Maya's school, even people from the community who had heard about Mr. Whitaker's story. Bella from the bistro was there too, carrying a tray of garlic knots and mini cupcakes, smiling warmly at Maya. Sweetheart, she said, kneeling in front of her, I had no idea you were planning something like this. It's beautiful. Maya beamed. Mr. Whitaker was special. I wanted people to remember him. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I think you've done just that, sweetheart. The parks department workers arrived with a young oak tree, its tiny branches stretching toward the sky. Maya stepped forward, holding a small wooden plaque. She had worked on it all week, carefully, painting the words with her tiny hands. In loving memory of Henry Whitaker. May this tree grow as strong as the kindness he left behind. As Daniel and the workers dug the hole, Maya watched carefully, clutching the letter to her chest. When it was time, she gently placed the plaque at the base of the tree, her fingers tracing the words. When the dirt was patted into place, Maya knelt beside the tree, pressing her small hands against its young trunk. Grow big and strong, she whispered. Just like Mr. Whitaker's kindness. Silence settled over the crowd. Then, slowly, a small wave of applause began, building into a warm, heartfelt cheer. Maya turned, startled, as she realized that all these people were here because of one simple act of kindness. Mr. Whitaker had started this. And now his story was spreading. As the afternoon wore on, people shared their own memories of kindness, small moments that had changed their lives. A man from the neighborhood stepped forward, clearing his throat. I didn't know Mr. Whitaker personally, he admitted, but hearing this story reminded me of my grandfather. He passed away alone, and I've always regretted not visiting more. I think it's time I changed that. I'm going to reach out to the seniors in our community. Maybe we all should. A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd. Maya listened intently, eyes wide. That's a great idea, she said. No one should be lonely. Bella clapped a hand on Daniel's shoulder. You've raised an incredible daughter, she whispered. Daniel's throat tightened. She's teaching me more than I'm teaching her. The event lasted hours, with people staying long after the tree was planted. They ate, they talked, they shared. And in that park, under the shade of a young tree, a new idea was born. Maya didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something so much bigger than just one act of kindness. This was the start of a movement. The evening after the tree planting ceremony, Daniel and Maya sat in the living room, still absorbing the overwhelming support from the community. Maya had been quiet since they got home, clutching Mr. Whitaker's letter as if it were a piece of him she couldn't let go of. Daniel watched his daughter closely. He could see her little mind working, her face deep in thought. Sweet pea, he said gently, are you okay? Maya blinked, snapping out of her thoughts. Yeah, I was just thinking. Daniel waited. He knew his daughter well enough to know that she wasn't just thinking, she was planning something. Daddy, she finally said, her voice steady, I don't want this to stop with the tree. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Maya sat up, her little hands gripping the letter tightly. Mr. Whitaker was lonely, right? And today? At the park, people were talking about other seniors who feel the same way. Daniel nodded. That's right. So, Maya continued, her determination growing with every word, what if we do something about it? What if we start visiting people like Mr. Whitaker so they don't feel lonely? Daniel's heart swelled. His little girl had just lost someone she cared about, and instead of sinking into her sadness, she was thinking of ways to help others. That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart, he said, feeling a surge of pride. Maya's face lit up. Really? You think so? I do, Daniel assured her. But we'll need a plan. Maya nodded eagerly. Yes, a plan. She grabbed her sketchbook and flipped to a blank page. Okay, so we need to find out how many seniors in our neighborhood don't have visitors. Maybe we can ask Bella, she knows a lot of people. That's a great place to start, Daniel agreed. And what do we do when we visit them? Maya thought for a moment. We can talk to them. Ask them about their lives, just like I did with Mr. Whitaker. Maybe bring them little gifts. And oh, we can make cards for them. Daniel chuckled. You love making cards. Maya grinned, her energy returning. Because they make people happy. And if we give them to seniors, they'll know someone is thinking about them. Daniel leaned forward, watching as she scribbled down her ideas. And what do we call this project of yours? He asked. Maya paused, tapping the pencil against her chin. Then, her face lit up with an idea. The Friendly Visitors Program. Daniel smiled. I love it. Maya's eyes sparkled. Then let's do it. And just like that, what had started as a simple act of kindness at a restaurant had turned into something bigger than either of them could have imagined. The next day after school, Daniel and Maya headed to Bella's bistro. They had called ahead, and Bella was waiting for them with a fresh batch of garlic knots. She sat across from them, curiosity in her eyes. So, what's this big idea you wanted to talk to me about? Maya sat up straighter, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Bella, we want to start something called the Friendly Visitors Program. We want to visit people like Mr. Whitaker so they don't feel lonely anymore. Bella's eyes softened. Oh, Maya, that's such a beautiful idea. We were hoping you could help, Daniel added. You know a lot of people in this neighborhood. Do you know any seniors who might need company? Bella exhaled, sitting back in her chair. More than you'd think. There's Mrs. Linwood, she lost her husband a few years ago and doesn't have any family nearby. Then there's Mr. Patel, he used to come in all the time, but ever since his wife passed, he doesn't talk to many people. Maya's eyes grew wide with excitement. That's perfect. We can start with them. Bella smiled warmly. I can give you their addresses. But Maya, are you sure you want to do this? It's a big responsibility. Maya nodded firmly. I know. But I want to do it. Mr. Whitaker was my friend. I don't want anyone else to feel like he did. Bella reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. Then you've got my full support, sweetheart. By the end of the week, Maya had gathered supplies, colored paper, markers, stickers for making cards, and even a notebook to keep track of the people they planned to visit. Their first stop was Mrs. Linwood's house, a small, cozy home with a front porch full of potted plants. Maya clutched a card in her hands, nerves suddenly bubbling up in her stomach. What if she doesn't want to see us? Daniel knelt beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Then we respect that. But I have a feeling she's going to appreciate this. Maya nodded, took a deep breath, and rang the doorbell. There was a long pause, then slow footsteps. When the door opened, a frail-looking woman with soft grey curls peered out, her expression cautious. Yes. Maya stepped forward, holding out the card. Hi, Mrs. Linwood. My name is Maya. I wanted to give you this. The elderly woman hesitated before taking the card with shaky hands. She opened it, reading the colorful, handwritten words. You are loved. You are important. You are never alone. Tears welled up in her eyes. Oh, my dear, she whispered, pressing a hand to her chest. This is beautiful. Maya smiled. We just wanted to say hi. We thought maybe you'd like some company. Mrs. Linwood stared at her, then at Daniel, as if trying to decide whether she should believe them. Then, slowly, her lips trembled into a smile. I would love some company. Maya's heart soared. And just like that, the friendly visitors program had officially begun. Maya sat on Mrs. Linwood's floral-patterned couch, her feet barely touching the floor as she looked around the cozy living room. The air smelled like lavender and fresh-baked cookies, and a stack of well-worn books sat on the coffee table. Mrs. Linwood smiled warmly as she settled into her armchair across from Maya and Daniel, still clutching the card Maya had given her. You know, dear, no one has made me a card in a very long time, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Maya grinned shyly. I love making cards. And I love meeting new friends. Daniel chuckled, giving his daughter a proud glance. We heard from Bella that you might enjoy some company. Mrs. Linwood sighed, running a frail hand over the card. It does get lonely sometimes, she admitted. I lost my husband 5 years ago, and my children live in another state. I don't see them very often. Maya's face fell with sympathy. That's really sad. But now you have us. We can visit you whenever you want. Mrs. Linwood's eyes glistened. I would love that. Maya's excitement bubbled over. Oh, do you like stories? Mr. Whitaker loved telling stories about when he was young. Do you have any fun stories? Mrs. Linwood chuckled. Oh, I have plenty. I used to be a schoolteacher, you know. Maya gasped. Really? That's what I want to be when I grow up. The elderly woman's face lit up with delight. Then we're going to get along just fine, young lady. As they talked, Daniel watched Maya with quiet admiration. She had such a natural way of making people feel special, of bringing light into places that had been dark for too long. When it was time to leave, Mrs. Linwood squeezed Maya's hands tightly. Thank you, sweetheart. This has been the best afternoon I've had in a long time. Maya beamed. We'll be back soon. And she meant it. By the following week, the friendly visitors program was growing faster than Maya had expected. Bella had spread the word through the bistro, and soon, other community members began reaching out. Daniel and Maya made a list of seniors who lived alone and might want visitors. There was Mr. Patel, a retired baker who hadn't spoken much since his wife passed. Miss Turner, a former artist, who used to paint murals all over town but had long since stopped. Maya wrote their names carefully in her notebook, making little notes beside them. We should bring Mr. Patel some cookies, she mused. Maybe that will help him remember how much he loved baking. Daniel smiled. That's a great idea. And Miss Turner, maybe we can bring her some paint and paper. Daniel ruffled Maya's curls. You've really thought about this, haven't you? Maya nodded eagerly. I just want them to be happy again. Their next visit was to Mr. Patel, and it didn't go as smoothly as Mrs. Linwood's. When they knocked on his door, the old man peered out cautiously, his deep brown eyes filled with skepticism. What do you want? He asked, his voice gruff. Maya held up a small bag of homemade chocolate chip cookies. Hi, Mr. Patel. I made these for you. We just wanted to say hello. The elderly man narrowed his eyes. Why? Maya hesitated. Because, we heard you might be lonely. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to shut the door. But then, he sighed, rubbing a hand over his weathered face. Come in, I suppose. Daniel exchanged a quick glance with Maya before stepping inside. The house smelled of spices and old memories, and there were faded pictures on the walls, photos of a younger Mr. Patel with a woman who looked like she had been the love of his life. Maya noticed the way his hands shook slightly as he sat down. She placed the cookies on the table in front of him. I love baking with my dad, she said. Did you bake a lot when you were younger? Mr. Patel stared at the cookies for a long time before finally reaching for one. I owned a bakery for 30 years, he murmured. My wife and I ran it together. Maya's eyes widened. That's amazing. Do you still bake? Mr. Patel shook his head, his expression unreadable. Not since she passed. Maya's heart squeezed. I bet she would want you to bake again. For a long moment, Mr. Patel didn't say anything. But then, he took a bite of the cookie, chewing slowly. A small, almost imperceptible smile appeared on his face. These are good, he admitted. Maya grinned. Maybe next time, you can teach me how to make something. Mr. Patel didn't respond right away, but something in his dark eyes softened. Maybe, he said at last. Daniel exhaled in quiet relief. It wasn't much, but it was a start. By the end of the month, Maya had visited 5 different seniors, each with their own stories, their own pain, their own hidden joy waiting to be uncovered. And something was happening. Mr. Patel started baking again, and one day, he even sent over a basket of homemade bread to the bistro. Miss Turner picked up a paintbrush for the first time in years, inspired by Maya's enthusiasm. Mrs. Linwood started writing letters to her grandchildren, reconnecting with them in a way she hadn't in years. Maya's small act of kindness was creating ripples. One day, Bella called Daniel with unexpected news. You're not going to believe this, she said over the phone, her voice tinged with emotion. The mayor heard about Maya's friendly visitors program. Daniel blinked in surprise. The mayor? Yes. He wants to meet her. He thinks this could be something much bigger. Daniel glanced at Maya, who was carefully crafting another card at the kitchen table, completely unaware of how far her idea had spread. He smiled. Tell the mayor we'd love to meet. And just like that, Maya's kindness was about to go even further than she had ever imagined. Maya sat on the couch, swinging her legs excitedly as Daniel buttoned up his shirt. It had been only a few weeks since she started the Friendly Visitors program, and now the mayor wanted to meet her. Do you think he'll like my idea? She asked, bouncing slightly. Daniel chuckled, adjusting his collar in the mirror. Sweet pea, I think he already does. That's why he invited us. Maya beamed, but then her face turned serious. I don't want to be famous or anything, Daddy. I just want people to help. Daniel's heart swelled with pride. His daughter wasn't doing this for recognition, she truly cared. He knelt in front of her. Maya, all you have to do today is be yourself. Just tell the mayor why this is important to you. Maya nodded confidently. Okay. When they arrived at City Hall, Bella was already waiting outside, smiling as she waved them over. I can't believe it, she said, giving Maya a warm hug. You've done something incredible. Sweetheart. Maya grinned shyly. It's not just me, Bella. Everyone's helping. Well, you started it, Bella pointed out. Just then, a tall man in a navy suit stepped out of the large double doors. He had a friendly face and warm brown eyes. Ah, you must be Maya, he said, extending his hand. Maya shook it firmly, just like her father had taught her. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mayor. The mayor chuckled. It's nice to meet you too, young lady. Come inside, let's talk. Inside his office, Maya sat on a big leather chair, her legs dangling above the floor as the mayor leaned forward with interest. "I heard about your friendly visitors program," he said, folding his hands on his desk. "Tell me, why you started it?" Maya took a deep breath, holding her father's hand for support. "Well, it started because I met Mr. Whitaker. He was all alone on his birthday, and that made me sad. I didn't want anyone to feel lonely like that." The mayor nodded, listening carefully. "So I started visiting other seniors," Maya continued. "And you know what? They have amazing stories. Mr. Patel used to be a baker, and now he's baking again. Miss Turner was an artist, and now she's painting. They just needed someone to remind them that people still care." The mayor's expression softened. "That's an incredible thing you're doing, Maya." Maya smiled. "But I want more people to help. There are lots of seniors out there, and I can't visit all of them alone." The mayor chuckled. "You're absolutely right." He turned to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, I'd like to officially support Maya's program. We can connect with senior centers and get volunteers involved. What do you think?" Daniel felt a lump in his throat. His daughter had started this with one small act of kindness, and now it was turning into something much bigger. "I think that's a wonderful idea," he said. The mayor turned back to Maya. "How would you like to work with the city to make the friendly visitors program even bigger?" Maya's eyes widened. "Really? We can do that? With your help, absolutely." Maya squealed with excitement, throwing her arms around Daniel. "Daddy, this is amazing." Daniel laughed, hugging her back. "Yes, it is, sweet pea." Bella clapped her hands together. "Looks like we have some work to do." Maya nodded eagerly. "Let's do it." And just like that, her small idea was about to change even more lives than she had ever imagined. Maya practically skipped out of City Hall, her excitement bubbling over. She couldn't believe what had just happened. The mayor had agreed to support her friendly visitors program. "Daddy, this means we can help so many more people," she exclaimed, twirling in place as they walked down the steps. Daniel chuckled, watching her enthusiasm. "It does, sweetheart. But we're going to need a plan." Bella, walking alongside them, nodded in agreement. "The mayor's support is a big deal, but we have to figure out how to get volunteers involved." Maya tapped her chin thoughtfully. "Maybe we can put up flyers? And tell my school about it?" Daniel smiled. "That's a great start. We'll need to spread the word as much as we can." Maya's eyes lit up with another idea. "What if we have a kickoff event? Like a big gathering where we invite people to sign up?" Bella snapped her fingers. "That's a fantastic idea. We could host it at Bella's Bistro. I'd be happy to provide food." Maya clapped her hands excitedly. "Yes. And we can invite some of the seniors we already visit, so people can hear their stories." Daniel looked at his daughter with admiration. She wasn't just thinking about starting a program. She was thinking about making it real and lasting. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it. We'll set the event for 2 weeks from now. That gives us time to prepare." Maya grinned. "It's going to be amazing." The next 2 weeks flew by in a blur of activity. Maya worked tirelessly, making handmade flyers with colorful designs, writing messages like, "Want to make a difference? Become a friendly visitor. Help brighten a senior's day." Daniel helped her print them, and together, they put them up around the neighborhood, at the library, at the grocery store, even on the school bulletin board. At school, Maya told everyone about the event. Some of her classmates seemed interested, while others just shrugged. But her teacher, Ms. Reynolds, was incredibly supportive. "This is an incredible project, Maya," she said. "I'll make an announcement about it during morning assembly." Maya beamed. By the time the kickoff event arrived, Maya was a mix of excitement and nerves. "What if no one shows up?" she asked as she and Daniel set up chairs at Bella's Bistro. Daniel knelt beside her. "Even if just one person comes, that's one more person helping than before." Maya nodded, taking a deep breath. "Okay." But when the event started, more people showed up than she ever expected. The bistro was packed, neighbors, classmates, even some parents who had heard about it through the school. Some of the seniors Maya had been visiting were also there, including Mrs. Linwood, Mr. Patel, and Ms. Turner. Bella had set up a refreshment table, and the atmosphere was warm and inviting. Daniel welcomed everyone, then turned the floor over to Maya. She stood in front of the crowd, her small hands clutching her speech notes. But as she looked around, she realized she didn't need them. She took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. I started the Friendly Visitors program because I met someone special, Mr. Whitaker. He was alone on his birthday, and I didn't want him to feel that way. That night, I learned that there are so many people who feel lonely, and I wanted to change that. She glanced at the seniors in the room. Since then, I've met some amazing people, people with stories, with memories, with so much to share. And all they needed was someone to listen. Maya looked out at the crowd, her voice steady. We all have time to give. A visit, a conversation, even just a smile can make a big difference. So, today, I'm asking you, will you help? For a moment, there was silence. Then, a soft clap started from the back of the room. Then another. And another. Soon, the entire room erupted into applause. Maya felt her heart swell. Bella stepped forward with a clipboard. For anyone who wants to volunteer, sign-ups are right here. People immediately lined up, eager to put their names down. Maya watched, her eyes wide with disbelief. It was working. People were joining her. The Friendly Visitors program wasn't just her idea anymore, it was becoming something bigger. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice filled with pride. You did it, sweet pea. Maya smiled up at him, her heart overflowing with happiness. No, Daddy, she said softly. We did it. The morning after the kickoff event, Maya sat at the kitchen table, staring at the long list of names. On the sign-up sheet, she ran her fingers over the paper, still in awe of how many people had agreed to help. Daddy, she said, eyes wide, we have 30 volunteers. Daniel, who was pouring himself a cup of coffee, smiled proudly. That's incredible, sweet pea. I knew people would want to be part of something this special. Maya grinned. Now we just have to figure out how to organize everyone. Daniel sat beside her, taking a sip of his coffee. Well, we can start by pairing volunteers with seniors who want visitors. We should check in with Mrs. Linwood, Mr. Patel, and Ms. Turner first. Maya nodded eagerly, flipping open her Friendly Visitors notebook. And we need more names. There must be other seniors who are lonely. Daniel thought for a moment. We can talk to the director at the senior center downtown. Maybe they know some residents who would love a visitor. Maya's eyes brightened. Yes, that's a great idea. But then, her brows furrowed. Daddy, what if someone signs up but doesn't take it seriously? What if they don't really care? Daniel reached over and squeezed her hand gently. That's a good concern, Maya. But I think most people signed up because they truly want to help. And if we ever feel like someone isn't taking it seriously, we can always find another volunteer. Maya nodded, reassured. Okay, she said, flipping to a fresh page in her notebook. Let's start matching people up. By the end of the day, Maya and Daniel had assigned 10 volunteers to different seniors in the neighborhood. Bella had agreed to help organize the remaining names, and the senior center director was thrilled about the program. This is exactly what some of our residents need, Ms. Alvarez, the director, told Maya when they met later that week. We have a lot of people here who don't get visitors. You're going to make a real difference. Maya beamed. I can't wait to meet them. Ms. Alvarez chuckled. I have a feeling they'll love you. Over the next few weeks, the Friendly Visitors program officially took off. Volunteers started visiting seniors, sitting with them for coffee, listening to their stories, even helping with small tasks like grocery shopping or reading aloud from books. One of the first new matches was between a high school girl named Kayla and an elderly woman named Ms. Dawson. Maya tagged along for their first meeting, bouncing excitedly as they knocked on Ms. Dawson's door. When the frail, silver-haired woman opened the door, she looked surprised. Oh, I wasn't expecting anyone today. Kayla smiled warmly. Hi, Ms. Dawson. My name is Kayla, and this is Maya. We're part of the Friendly Visitors program. Ms. Dawson's thin lips curved into a small smile. Oh, yes. I heard about that. She peered at Kayla, looking her up and down. You're awfully young. Kayla nodded. I am. But I love listening to stories, and Bella told me you used to be a teacher. I was hoping you could tell me what it was like. Ms. Dawson's eyes twinkled with interest. Oh, I suppose I could. She opened the door wider. Well, don't just stand there. Come in. Maya squeezed Kayla's arm excitedly as they stepped inside. It was happening. More friendships were forming. More lonely hearts were being filled. As the weeks passed, Maya and Daniel kept track of the program's progress. Volunteers reported back with wonderful stories. Seniors who had been quiet and withdrawn were smiling again, opening up, even laughing. Even Mr. Patel, who had been so reluctant at first, had started hosting small baking lessons for his visitors. One afternoon, when Maya and Daniel visited him, he had a surprise waiting. I made something special today, he said, setting down a warm plate of cinnamon rolls on the table. Maya's eyes widened. Wow! These look amazing. Mr. Patel smiled. I haven't made these in a long time. My wife used to love them. Maya reached for one, her heart swelling with happiness. I think she'd be really proud of you, Mr. Patel. The old man's eyes softened, and for the first time, he looked truly at peace. Maya took a bite of the cinnamon roll and sighed happily. It tasted like love. That evening, as Maya curled up on the couch, flipping through her notebook, Daniel watched her with quiet admiration. You've started something really special, sweetheart, he said. Maya looked up, her eyes shining with determination. I don't want to stop, Daddy. I want to keep going. I want more people to help. Daniel smiled, brushing a curl from her face. Then we'll keep going. Maya grinned. The Friendly Visitors program was no longer just an idea. It was a movement. Maya sat at the kitchen table, her Friendly Visitors notebook open in front of her. She had already filled several pages with names, notes, and ideas. But now, there was something bigger on her mind. She tapped her pencil against the page, looking at her father. Daddy, I think we need to have a meeting. Daniel looked up from his coffee. A meeting? Maya nodded firmly. Now that we have so many volunteers, we need to check in with everyone. We have to make sure the seniors are happy, and that the visitors are doing okay too. Daniel smiled. That's a great idea, Sweet Pea. A way to make sure everything is running smoothly. Maya grinned. Exactly. And maybe we can invite some of the seniors too. That way, they can tell us what they like and what else they might need. Daniel leaned back in his chair, impressed. You're thinking like a real leader. Maya giggled. Well, I have to make sure my visitors are being friendly. Daniel chuckled. All right, let's set it up. When should we have this meeting? Maya flipped through her notebook. How about next Saturday? That gives everyone time to plan. Sounds perfect. By the time Saturday arrived, Bella's bistro was once again filled with people. Maya sat at the front of the room with her notebook, a little nervous but mostly excited. When she saw the volunteers coming in, Kayla, Bella, some of her classmates, and even a few new faces, she felt a warm pride in her chest. Then, the seniors started arriving too, Mrs. Linwood, Mr. Patel, Ms. Turner, and even Ms. Dawson, who usually avoided gatherings. Bella brought out trays of cookies and warm bread, and soon, the room was filled with laughter and conversation. Maya stood up, taking a deep breath. Hi, everyone, she said, her voice steady but excited. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to have this meeting to check in and make sure our Friendly Visitors program is going great. She looked around the room. So, let's start with the seniors. How is everything going? There was a brief pause, and then Mrs. Linwood spoke first. Well, I have to say, I didn't realize how much I needed this, she said, smiling at Maya. Having someone visit every week has made me feel alive again. Maya's heart swelled. Mr. Patel nodded. I wasn't sure about this at first, he admitted. But teaching Maya, and now others, how to bake has been the best thing I've done in years. A murmur of agreement went around the room. Miss Turner, the artist, leaned forward. I've started painting again, she said with a smile. And next week, I'm going to teach a small art class for anyone who's interested. The crowd clapped, and Maya's excitement bubbled over. That's amazing, Miss Turner. Maya turned to the volunteers. How about you guys? How has it been visiting the seniors? Kayla, the high schooler who had been paired with Ms. Dawson, smiled. I love visiting Ms. Dawson. She has taught me so much about teaching. I was thinking, maybe we could start a mentorship program where seniors can share their skills with younger people. Maya gasped in excitement. Yes. That would be so cool. The energy in the room buzzed with ideas. Some volunteers suggested game nights with seniors, others wanted to organize holiday visits. Maya jotted everything down, her notebook filling up faster than ever. By the end of the meeting, the Friendly Visitors program wasn't just about visiting lonely seniors anymore. It was about building a true community. As the meeting wrapped up, Daniel watched his daughter with pride and amazement. She wasn't just a little girl with an idea anymore. She was a leader. Maya stood on a chair, calling out one last message. Thank you all for being here. And remember, kindness doesn't stop with just one visit. We can all keep spreading it, every single day. The room erupted in applause, and Daniel felt his chest tighten with emotion. This had started as a simple dinner at Bella's. Now, it was changing lives. And Maya? Maya was just getting started. The days following the meeting at Bella's Bistro were some of the busiest yet. The Friendly Visitors program had expanded beyond anything Maya had imagined, and she and Daniel were working hard to keep everything running smoothly. Maya spent most of her afternoons after school checking in with volunteers, adding new names to her ever-growing list of seniors in need of visits, and brainstorming ways to make their time together even more special. One day, as she sat at the kitchen table, her notebook open in front of her, she looked up at her father with an idea forming in her mind. Daddy, what if we had a fundraiser? Daniel raised an eyebrow as he flipped a page in his newspaper. A fundraiser? Maya nodded excitedly. Yeah. We could raise money to buy things for the seniors, like books, art supplies, puzzles, or even little gifts to surprise them. Daniel smiled. That's a fantastic idea. Do you have something in mind? Maya tapped her pencil on the page. Maybe a bake sale? Or we could have a community event where people can donate. Daniel thought for a moment. What if we did both? A charity event with a bake sale and activities? Maya's eyes lit up. Yes. And we can have a table where people can sign up to be friendly visitors too. Daniel laughed, ruffling her curls. All right, let's get planning. Within a few days, word had spread. Bella offered to host the fundraiser at the bistro. Mr. Patel agreed to bake extra treats for the bake sale, and Ms. Turner volunteered to set up an art corner where people could buy small paintings to support the program. The entire community was coming together. On the morning of the event, Maya woke up buzzing with excitement. She and Daniel arrived at Bella's early to help set up. The tables were filled with freshly baked goods, hand-painted signs, and flyers explaining the Friendly Visitors program. Maya placed a small donation jar at the front of the bake sale table with a sign that read, "Every dollar helps bring smiles to our seniors." Before long, the event was in full swing. Families, students, and seniors alike filled the bistro, chatting, laughing, and enjoying the warm sense of community. Maya stood behind the bake sale table, helping sell cookies and cupcakes, when she noticed something unexpected, a familiar face in the crowd. A tall, older gentleman with kind blue eyes. She nudged her father. Daddy, look. Daniel turned and froze in place. Standing near the entrance, looking both nervous and hopeful, was Mr. Whitaker's housekeeper, Ms. Evelyn. Maya's heart pounded. She hadn't seen her since the day the officers delivered Mr. Whitaker's letter. Ms. Evelyn spotted them and slowly made her way over. Hello, Maya. Hello, Daniel, she said softly. Maya smiled brightly. Ms. Evelyn. I'm so happy you're here. The woman looked around, taking in the bustling fundraiser. I heard about what you've been doing, and I just had to come see it for myself. She looked down at Maya, her voice thick with emotion. He would have been so proud of you. Maya's chest swelled. I just wanted to keep his kindness going. Ms. Evelyn reached into her purse and pulled out a small worn-out journal. I found this while cleaning out Mr. Whitaker's house, she explained. I wasn't sure what to do with it at first, but now, I think he would have wanted you to have it. Maya took the journal carefully, feeling its aged leather cover beneath her fingers. She flipped it open, her breath catching as she saw the familiar handwriting inside. It was a collection of Mr. Whitaker's memories, his thoughts, his experiences as a teacher, and even some of his childhood stories. Tears pricked her eyes. Thank you, Ms. Evelyn, she whispered. The older woman smiled warmly. No, Maya, thank you. Daniel placed a comforting hand on Maya's shoulder. Maybe we can read some of these stories to the seniors. Maya nodded quickly. Yes. That's a great idea. Ms. Evelyn reached into her purse one more time and pulled out a small envelope. And one more thing. This is a donation from Mr. Whitaker's estate. He left behind some money, and I think he'd want it to go toward something meaningful. Maya took the envelope, her hands shaking slightly as she opened it. Inside was a check with Mr. Whitaker's name on it, a donation large enough to keep the Friendly Visitors program running for years. Daniel's breath hitched. Maya, this is incredible, he murmured. Maya's eyes shimmered with tears. Now we can help even more people. The three of them stood there for a moment, taking in the overwhelming weight of kindness and generosity. Mr. Whitaker was gone, but his presence was still shaping lives. Maya clutched the journal to her chest, knowing deep down that this was only the beginning. And as the fundraiser continued, with laughter, music, and the warmth of community filling the air, Maya felt something deep in her heart. Mr. Whitaker's kindness would never be forgotten. That evening, after the fundraiser had wrapped up, Maya sat on the couch, the soft glow of the living room lamp casting warm light over Mr. Whitaker's journal. The day had been overwhelming. In the best way possible, so many people had come together to support the Friendly Visitors program, and the donation from Mr. Whitaker's estate meant they could do even more than she had ever imagined. But right now, all she wanted to do was read the words he had left behind. Daniel sat beside her, watching as she carefully turned the pages. What does it say, sweetheart? Maya bit her lip, scanning the first few lines before reading aloud. The greatest lesson I ever learned as a teacher was not from a book, but from a child. Children see the world as it should be, not as it is. They don't care about money or status. They care about kindness. They remind us that we were all children once, before the world made us forget. She paused, blinking back tears. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her back. He was a wise man. Maya nodded, flipping through more pages. There were stories from his childhood, notes about his students, and even letters he had written to his late wife and granddaughter, Eleanor. Then, she found something that made her gasp softly. A page dedicated to her. Her name was written in neat, elegant handwriting at the top, with the date from the night they had met at Bella's Bistro. Maya's voice wavered as she read aloud. Tonight, for the first time in many years, I did not eat my birthday dinner alone. A little girl named Maya and her father joined me. I didn't realize how much I needed their company until I had it. It's funny how life works. You think you're invisible, and then someone sees you. Truly sees you. Maya's chest ached with emotion, but she kept reading. Maya reminds me of Eleanor, her smile, her kindness, the way she talks with her hands when she's excited. I don't know how much time I have left, but for the first time in a long while, I feel at peace. If I don't wake up tomorrow, I hope she knows. She gave an old man the best gift of all. She reminded me that I mattered. Tears slipped down Maya's cheeks. Daniel reached over, gently closing the journal. That's enough for tonight, sweet pea. Maya sniffled, leaning into her father's side. I miss him, Daddy. Daniel kissed the top of her head. I know, sweetheart. But he's still here, in the kindness you're spreading. In the lives you're changing. Maya held the journal close to her chest, feeling its warmth. She had started the Friendly Visitors program to help people like Mr. Whitaker, but she realized now, it was helping her too. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, she made herself a promise. She would never stop spreading kindness. Because kindness had given her Mr. Whitaker. And now, it was her turn to pass it on. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The Friendly Visitors program was stronger than ever, and with the funds from Mr. Whitaker's donation, they were able to expand. Maya and Daniel worked with the Senior Center to set up regular game nights, book readings, and special outings. Ms. Turner's art classes became so popular that they had to schedule more sessions. Mr. Patel started a weekly baking club, teaching both seniors and kids how to make traditional recipes from his youth. Maya was busier than ever, but she didn't mind. Every visit, every event, every new friendship that formed, it all made her happier than she had ever been. Then, one day, while sitting at the kitchen table, she had another idea. Daddy, she said, tapping her pencil against her notebook, I want to start a kindness club at school. Daniel looked up from his coffee. A kindness club? Maya nodded excitedly. Yes. A place where kids can learn about helping others. We can do little acts of kindness, like making cards, visiting the senior center, or even just spreading kindness at school. Daniel smiled with pride. I think that's an amazing idea, Maya. She grinned. Do you think my school will let me? I don't see why not, Daniel said. Let's talk to your teacher about it. By the following week, Maya was sitting in her principal's office, explaining her idea. So you want to start a kindness club? Principal Harris asked, folding her hands on her desk. Maya nodded eagerly. Yes. We can do small kindness projects, visit the senior center, and even help other students who need friends. The principal smiled warmly. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Maya. Maya bounced in her seat. Really? Does that mean we can do it? Principal Harris chuckled. I don't see why not. You'll need a teacher to supervise, but I think Ms. Reynolds would love to help. Maya beamed. Thank you so much. As she left the office, her heart pounded with excitement. The Friendly Visitors program was just the beginning. Now, she was going to bring kindness into her school too. And she knew, this was only the start. Maya practically floated down the hallway, her excitement bubbling over. She couldn't believe it, her school was going to have a kindness club. As soon as she got to class, she spotted Ms. Reynolds, her favorite teacher, and rushed over. Ms. Reynolds. Principal Harris said you could help me with the kindness club. Ms. Reynolds' face lit up. She did she? Well, I'd be honored, Maya. This is a beautiful idea. Maya grinned. I already have so many ideas. We can make kindness cards, have compliment days, and even get kids to join the Friendly Visitors program when they're older. Ms. Reynolds chuckled. You've put a lot of thought into this, haven't you? Maya nodded firmly. Kindness is important. The teacher's eyes softened. Yes, Maya. It really is. The next morning, an announcement came over the loudspeakers. Attention students. If you're interested in joining our new kindness club, come to room 104. During lunch. Let's spread some kindness together. Maya's stomach flipped with nerves. What if nobody showed up? What if kids didn't care about kindness? Daniel had told her the night before, even if just one person comes, that's someone who wants to help. She clung to that thought as she walked into room 104 at lunch. And then, her eyes widened. The classroom wasn't empty. At least 15 kids were already there. Her classmates. Kids from other grades. Even some of the older kids who usually didn't talk to her. They were all here. For her club. Maya felt her heart swell. Ms. Reynolds smiled, standing beside her. Looks like you've got a good turnout. Maya took a deep breath, stepping forward. Hi, everyone, she said. Thanks for coming. I started this club because I believe kindness can change lives. It changed mine. She looked around at the kids, some nodding in agreement, some just listening quietly. We're going to do things that make people smile, small things, big things, whatever we can do to help. Because even the tiniest act of kindness can mean everything to someone. A few kids clapped. Then, a boy in the back raised his hand. So, what do we do first? Maya's eyes lit up. I'm glad you asked. She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of blank cards and markers. We're going to make cards for the seniors at the Friendly Visitors program. Excited whispers filled the room as the kids grabbed supplies. As they scribbled kind messages, Maya sat back and watched. It was really happening. The kindness club was real. And it was just the beginning. By the end of the school week, Maya had 20 official members in the kindness club. Kids were writing notes to teachers, leaving kind messages in lockers, and helping each other at recess. Ms. Reynolds even suggested that they have a kindness week where every student in the school would do one good deed every day. Maya couldn't believe it. Her idea had started as something so small. Now, it was spreading like sunshine. And as she wrote in her Friendly Visitors notebook that night, she thought about Mr. Whitaker. He had been her first lesson in kindness. Now, she was teaching others. And she knew, this was what she was meant to do. Maya sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, her Friendly Visitors notebook open in her lap. The pages were filled with names, ideas, and little doodles of smiling faces. She had spent months working on the program, watching it grow from one simple dinner with Mr. Whitaker into something so much bigger than she had ever imagined. Now, with the Kindness Club thriving at school and the Friendly Visitors program expanding, she felt proud, but also a little overwhelmed. She looked up at her father, who was sitting on the edge of her bed, watching her carefully. "Daddy, what if it's too much?" she asked, her voice small. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Too much?" Maya sighed, flipping through the pages. "There are so many people to help. The seniors, the volunteers, the kids at school. What if I can't keep up with everything?" Daniel set down the book he had been reading and knelt beside her. "Sweet pea, you don't have to do everything alone." Maya frowned. "But what if nobody else cares as much as I do?" Daniel chuckled, tapping her nose playfully. "Maya, look at everything you've done. People do care. That's why so many people joined the Kindness Club. That's why the Friendly Visitors program is growing. Because you inspired them." Maya bit her lip. "But what if they stop?" Daniel smiled, tucking a curl behind her ear. "Then you remind them why it matters. You keep being you, and I promise, kindness will keep spreading." Maya thought about that for a moment. Maybe he was right. She wasn't doing this alone anymore. She had her friends, her teachers, Bella, the volunteers, and the seniors themselves. And most importantly, she had Mr. Whitaker's lesson in her heart. She sat up straighter, determination returning. "Okay. Then let's keep going." Daniel smiled. "That's my girl." The following week, Maya and her Kindness Club members organized their biggest project yet, a community event at the Senior Center. They planned games, music, and an art showcase featuring paintings from Ms. Turner's art class. On the day of the event, Maya stood in front of the bustling room, watching kids and seniors laughing together. Mr. Patel was teaching a group of students how to knead dough, while Ms. Dawson was sharing stories from her time as a teacher. Maya turned to Daniel, her heart swelling. "Look at this, Daddy." Daniel put a gentle hand on her shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. "This is all because of you, Maya." Maya shook her head, smiling softly. "No. This is because of all of us." She looked toward the window, where the sunlight filtered through. For a moment, she imagined Mr. Whitaker sitting at his usual table, watching with a smile. And she knew, he was still with her. His kindness had started something that would never fade. As Maya looked around the room, watching new friendships blossom, she realized something. This wasn't the end of her journey. It was just the beginning. And with every act of kindness, with every life touched, she would carry Mr. Whitaker's legacy forward. Forever.